welcome to today's talk with Chats with Champions, co-sponsored by Skidompha Library and Sherman's Maine Coast Bookstore. Our speaker today is Jack Kennedy, a local realtor with Drum and Drum, but he's not here today to sell you a house. Before I get into his topic, I'd like to remind you that next week another local man, Kevin Hancock, CEO of Hancock Lumber, will be giving the talk. It will be on Thursday, September 15th, and it's about a life-changing event to lead to him writing a book called Not for Sale, Finding Center in the Land of Crazy Horse. Also, please remember to turn off your cell phones, pagers, anything that makes noise and it's light that might disturb the people around you. These days, it's so easy to get overwhelmed by the terrible things going on in the world. Political mudslinging, corruption, bureaucracy, and just the sheer enormity of the problems that face us. It's easy to just throw up your hands and do nothing about it. Jack Kennedy didn't do that. He found a problem, did his research, assembled a team to come up with a strategy, and then to provide the resources to deal with the problem. And you know what? It worked. He has a success story to share with you today, and we look forward to hearing from him. The title of his topic is Small is Beautiful, focusing in on a small problem and really giving it your attention. After hearing his story today, I don't expect you all to move off to the South Pacific, though it may be tempting. But I do hope that each of you can find a small way to make this world a better place. Jack Kennedy.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So this is my first use of PowerPoint. This has been quite a learning curve for me the last few years. This is just the latest thing I had to learn. So it's a bit of an experiment that makes all of you lab rats, so thank you for volunteering. So if I heard from someone that 3 friends with limited resources and no medical experience were setting out to eliminate malaria from an isolated coast in tropical Sumbawa, I would be very skeptical. I mean, there's the Gates Foundation, there's the World Health Organization, there's the Indonesian government. These huge agencies all working on malaria. So what could these 3 individuals do that isn't already being done? Well, I hope to show you today that there's plenty we can do. My own overseas adventure started actually way back in 1952 when, as a sickly 5-year-old boy from New England, I moved to the South Seas with my family. It was a healthy outdoor life. My sisters and I spent many hours in the sea. We attended native schools, and for my 11th birthday, I got an outrigger canoe. By 12, I was sent off to an English-style boarding school in Australia. That was quite a change. Wool pants, wool short pants, knee socks, beanie cap, caning, which I think they have discontinued now, though I'm not sure. In fact, the school is now co-ed, so that's quite dramatic. Before long, I was a young man thinking about his future, inspired by the public service work that my parents led, and determined to find some way to continue the international adventure. Some sort of useful overseas work was calling me. At BC, I wrote a paper on the impact of small business could have on reducing poverty in the developing world. Maybe I could apply the public service ethic of my parents to business life. In 1973, I had just finished we're just getting started, having finished college and military service, when a prominent British economist named E.F. Schumacher published a book entitled Small is Beautiful, Economics as If People Matter. And this little book struck a nerve with me, maybe you remember it. To digress for a moment, have you ever wondered why 26% of Americans volunteer? Or what propels someone to serve food at a homeless shelter, pull over on the side of the highway in the rain and help a distressed motorist, or feed a stray cat? Compassion is an incredibly powerful human force. It's admired across all cultures and all religions. It's not partisan. It's not left or right. It's not black or white. It's solid, a universal good. It's really quite amazing. So let's talk a little bit about Indonesia. On and off for most of the past 30 years, I've had some connection to Indonesia, mostly on Bali and Lombok. In general, what I've seen has renewed my faith in the concept of progress. Indonesia is a rich country with many poor people. It's rich in both human and natural resources. It has oil, it has gas, mining, forestry, agriculture, aquaculture, and great tourist attractions, both cultural and natural. It's amazing how few people know anything about Indonesia. You can see there on the map, it's located between Australia and Malaysia. It comprises about 17,000 islands, although many of them are uninhabited. The estimated population is over 260 million people, which makes it the fourth most populous country in the world. You have China, India, the United States. The next most populous nation in the world is Indonesia. Indonesia is the only true democracy in Southeast Asia. It's moderate, peace-loving, a democratic republic, the largest Muslim majority country in the world. So the stability and prosperity of Indonesia is very much in everyone's interest. The decade from 1997 to 2007 was a watershed period in Indonesia. In 97, there was the Asian financial meltdown, which affected the whole region. That was precipitated the fall of the Suharto regime in Jakarta, and Suharto had been in power in Indonesia ever since Sukarno, the revolutionary founder of the nation, in '46. So Suharto came into power, I think, in the '60s, and only lost power in '97. So at that time, the financial collapse, the rupiah, the Indonesian currency, devalued substantially. Many of the provinces began agitating for autonomy from Jakarta. It was questioned whether it even hold together as a nation. As if this wasn't enough, fanatical terrorist cells began setting off bombs across the archipelago. One little vignette that I remember, flying into Lombok Island, it was the first flight from Bali following the January 2000 riots. I was the only Westerner on the plane. Most of the other passengers were returning home to salvage their businesses after the looting. There were no tourists on the island. There were armed soldiers everywhere. Martial law, a nighttime curfew, shoot to kill in place. You could see burned out buses on the sides of the road. Hotels were completely empty. Our Sasak potters and weavers were certainly surprised to see me showing up to buy. Subsequently, the 2002 Bali nightclub bombings, and then the 2005 restaurant bombings, and then the SARS outbreak in Asia all dramatically impacted tourism. Shortly after the Jimbaran restaurant bombing, I acquired a building lot in a small Balinese village. Always the contrarian, I guess. I thought it was a great time to buy. Taman Village is beautiful. The culture is fascinating. but I wasn't sure I would be accepted, because this was not on the tourist circuit. There were never been a non-Balinese living in this village. When I say non-Balinese, I mean not even another type of Indonesian, much less a Westerner. There were no restaurants, no tourist facilities. I had no plan for the land and didn't have much money. But slowly over the years, I built a winter getaway home, and meanwhile, the fear of terrorists had subsided, and by 2008, tourists had once again returned to Bali. My place, which was built from local materials by my friend Cadet and his family, looks a bit like a lost temple. It is now known as Honey Tree Villa. Life is sweet. It rents successfully on Airbnb. It provides good living for several families in the village. And Cadet and I have just added a second property, Honey Tree Lodge. So hopefully Bali's troubled period is now in the past. Tourism is certainly booming, with 4 million visitors a year to Bali, and the population of Bali is only 3 million. The island was desperately poor. The island that was desperately poor and rioting in January of 2000, Lombok, now has new luxury villas and resorts popping up almost daily. So as Bali becomes increasingly crowded with visitors, adventure travelers are tempted to travel further east, to Komodo Island, for example, home of the famous Komodo dragons, which are the world's largest monitored lizard. They have a national park there to protect them. There's also in this national park, which is huge and includes many islands, fabulous scuba diving. They don't get a lot of rain there, so the waters are very clear. Poor health and weak infrastructure have stunted economic development on islands east of Bali for more than a century. But now the Indonesian government is actively promoting Lombok, Sumbawa, Flores, and Sumba as the next great tourist destinations after Bali. So the islands of eastern Indonesia are entering a new era. Upgraded roads, better airports, more frequent and cheaper flights are opening the region to tourism for the first time. To give you an idea, if you get on a flight in Bali at 6 o'clock in the morning, you can be at a surf town on Sumbawa by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's really quite accessible. They have daily flights now. It used to be you had to go overland. It was a 2-day journey to get to Sumbawa. So in Sumbawa now, they probably only have 1,000 tourists a year versus 4 million in Bali. It's an hour away. So that's likely to change. So tourism will bring new and better jobs to islanders, but there are risks to tourists from unsolved health issues, especially malaria. A couple of years ago, I got the urge to visit Sumbawa. Maybe I could find an undiscovered beach, because Sumbawa is blessed with miles of white sand beach, stunning scenery, and warm, friendly people. So in February 2014, I went exploring with my good friend Zainel, who does remote beachcombing as a business. We flew to Bima, took a car over hilly roads to Lakey Peak, the world-famous surf spot next to Hulu Village. This was the starting point for a true island adventure. Our destination was Sili, a small remote hamlet across Sept Bay. No one seemed to know anything about it. We were attracted by the beach. We first saw it on Google Earth. Now it's just visible from the surf resort on the horizon across the bay. So I'm going to take you through some slides here and show you our trip over to Sili and what we discovered when we got there. So we rented outrigger canoes with outboards. We went across, about a 1-hour journey across. It's the mouth of this very large bay. but it's the open Indian Ocean, where really, in the afternoons, winds pick up, you can get 4 or 5 foot seas quite easily. So it's a little bit of a hazardous crossing. So just going across. That's the beach at Sili. It's almost a kilometer long, pure white sand. Just a few temporary huts on the beach from seaweed harvesters. The village itself is set well back. We met Yusuf, who's one of the village elders. These are seaweed harvesters who spend the seaweed season down on the beach, living there. The seaweed just sort of washes up onto the sand in great windrows. They gather it up by hand, carry it up near their huts, spread it out on plastic tarps, dry it in the sun, and then you can see as this woman is doing, they pick through any bits of plastic, they remove it, clean it up. When it's all dry, they stuff it into bags that their buyers have given them, store it in bamboo shelters that are covered with tarps, and when they get a boatload, they call their buyer who comes with a boat, and they make about $100 a year doing this kind of work. These are some sunbathers at Sili Village. You can see from this aerial shot, the village is set well back from the beach. And I'll point out, if you look on the right-hand side there, that body of water there back behind the beach, that's brackish water, or a freshwater stream comes in there. So, and then on the left side, you see another stream coming in, so there, in the wet season, there's good water. But the challenge is, as far as if you were trying to eliminate mosquitoes, it would be hopeless. I mean, just too much water around, too many acres of that. Mosquitoes can breed in that brackish water. It doesn't have to be pure fresh water. So eliminating mosquitoes would not be a strategy that would be possible unless you had millions of dollars and lots of bad chemicals. So this is the road through the jungle that goes back to the village. And we are emerging, seeing the village. Aerial shot. The shiny long roof there is the primary school. Houses are made from local wood, built by hand in the village. They do, in the dry season, there's a bad road that a four-wheel drive truck can get in. The wet season, no vehicles can get in. So they do have tin roofs, but that's about all they buy to build these houses. The rest they make.
Excuse me?
Yes?
What's the population of
This village is about 450 people in this village. We end up taking on a project of 3 villages, so about 1,000 people is in our project area. There are no toilets in this village, and there's no running water. So they take water from dug wells, as you can see here. They're well made, from local stone and cement. They're well sealed, but they don't have any covers. And they don't even use a crank they just use a piece of rope and a bucket, throw it down into the bottom of the well and haul the water. For family use, they processed the rice the way they did hundreds of years ago, pounding it and then tossing it in the air and let the wind separate the chaff from the grain. Attractive, friendly people, lots of babies. Notice the young girl in the center there, she's quite undernourished. They do have a nutrition problem. Even in the wet season when I'm there, when there's plenty of water, most of the families don't have vegetable gardens. They're mostly eating rice with some wild beans that they stew up with salt and put on top of the rice. Many days they just have plain white rice for breakfast, and then white rice and some little beans on top for dinner. In the dry season, all of those wild vegetables are gone. There's no rain for 6 months, and so one of the things we're trying to do as in addition to the malaria project is to address the nutrition problem. But they are very productive farmers. They grow surpluses of rice and corn and sell it at the end of the season. That's the primary income from the village.
they have any protein?
Not much.
No fish.
They try, you know, the young boys go out, spearfish, but it's largely fished out, so they're catching fish like this. Lots of horses in Sumbawa and also Sumba. They're known for their horses. They never eat them. They have, you see all those cattle, they never eat those animals. Those are like bank accounts. They sell one if they're getting married or going on the Hajj to Mecca. So in the midst of all of this, right, all of a sudden, we find a photovoltaic power plant. Okay, they have electricity about 6 to 8 hours a day. At night, they turn it on, no power during the day. Every house is wired up. They put this in the year before we arrived, so in 2013, the government. And so they have this rural electrification project in Indonesia, and they have that in the seeds. So we made 2 trips in 2014, really became involved with the people of Sili and met with the village elders. We thought we would like to make some kind of investment, do something there. So we did a little assessment of the challenges. So to recap, we talked about deficient diet, poverty, typical income about $100 a year per family. Diseases, malaria is number 1, typhus, which is caused by a flea. Comes and goes, it's periodically a problem, and lots of other issues. No health care facilities in the village. There's a well-trained male nurse, lives in the village, works from home, is associated with the government health service, but receives no salary. This is kind of a common pattern. Half the teachers in the schools receive no salary, and as poor as they are, they can't really afford to go to school every day, so the schools are poorly attended by the teachers. Crop losses is a big problem. There are wild pigs in the jungle, and every night the pigs come in and chomp on the corn. So the young men are patrolling their fields all night long with machetes, trying to defend their crops, being exposed to mosquitoes.
Why aren't they eating the wild pigs?
They're Muslims, they don't eat pork.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that would be a nice solution.
Nice.
Unfortunately, not practical in this case. To convert them all to Catholicism, which is what can happen. But on the positive side, right? It's a beautiful, beautiful valley. It's remote, but it's amazingly accessible. I mean, if you had ground people organized, pick somebody up at an airport, take them to a boat, you had a boatman ready, you could leave Bali 6 o'clock in the morning and you could be on the beach at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They're friendly, peaceful people, they're open to change, they're really looking for new opportunities. They've got a gorgeous white sand beach, and the part that I like the best is because they are so poor, there is no pollution. They don't have plastic trash everywhere like you see in Bali, because they haven't had the money to buy anything that's wrapped in plastic, except cigarettes, of course. They have cigarettes no matter where you go. So you see plastic cigarette wrappers, that's the only kind of trash pretty much you see. Good groundwater, surprisingly, the valley is sandy, and it has a layer of rock underneath. So the water in the wet season comes off the mountains, sinks right down, so they've got a great aquifer. So this is a photo I put up here to show a poster child of bad behavior. So this is my first trip, taking no prophylactic drugs. We didn't really know it was malaria. I mean, we could have done some research, but we didn't. So I'm up here with the Kadus, the village chief, and we did a hike, and we're hot. We were trying to check out this, it used to be an old dam up in the hills, and they had a water supply there, and the dam blew out. He wanted to show me that, a little bit of money, we could fix this dam. So we're hot, and we take our shirts off, and we're sitting in the water, and we're in the shade, and there's, of course, mosquitoes there, even in the middle of the day. And then I wanted to camp on the beach to get a sense of what it was like down the beach, so we brought a tent, so we went at night out in that brackish area, and we threw nets, and we caught crayfish, and we cooked them on the fire, half of the males in the village all camped around with us, out around the campfire, and mosquitoes were everywhere. And then this is the sunrise that morning. So at this point, I'm totally in love with Sili village. Come back home and end up at being met. So I fell in love with Sili village, and 12 days after returning home to Maine, I found myself hospitalized with malaria. P. falciparum malaria is a nasty disease. In my case, it started with chills. I was shivering when I came home from work one day. We've been home a little over a week. I come home and I thought, you know, still spring. I've been down the tropics. I thought, oh, I'm just not used to it. I was really cold, couldn't get warm. I put a ski cap on, I went to bed. Over the next 48 hours, I developed a fever of 103. I had absolutely no energy. I mean, I'd never felt that way before. Just to get up from the bed and walk to the toilet was like, I'm not sure I can make it. Could hardly, while I was hospitalized at Maine Med, my platelet count dropped dangerously low. Your blood no longer clots well, because the platelets are what clot your blood. So I was getting nosebleeds and gum bleeds. My IV popped out during the night, and I woke up and I was in like a pool of blood. It was scary. I hadn't felt this vulnerable since I was down with dengue fever almost 60 years earlier. Malaria is a mosquito-borne infectious disease. It's the Anopheles mosquito is the one that transmits malaria. It's the Plasmodium type that affects humans, and it's a protozoa, actually. So when you're bitten by an infected mosquito, the parasite travels first to your liver, and it develops there for generally 10 to 14 days. Some types of malaria can be up to 30 days. You experience no symptoms during this stage. You don't know you're sick. And then it changes form stay on track here with my slides. Okay, 48, that sounds good. Then it changes form and infects your red blood cells. It multiplies inside these cells, which then rupture in 48 to 72 hours later, and that's when you start to really feel sick. Another mosquito bites this infected person, and then the cycle continues. There are 4 types of malaria. There's two of the types are relapsing types. So a lot of people, when they hear I have something to do with malaria, they say, oh, you can't really cure that, I hear. Well, it's not true. There are 2 types that are relapsing, so it goes into the blood, then it goes back into the liver, and it keeps releasing, so it's cycling around between the liver and the blood. A lot of Vietnam returnees who had malaria went their whole life with this recurring pattern because they really didn't know how to treat malaria but they have since figured it out. You just have to stay on the antibiotics longer. And so it's very important to know what kind of malaria you have. You come down with malaria, so they know whether it's recurring type or non-recurring type. There are 4 main types, and there's one newly discovered one, which in Southeast Asia, but not yet a factor. But the most dangerous, and the type that I had, and the most common in Sumbawa, is Plasmodium falciparum. It's a non-relapsing type malaria, so that's good, but it's also the most deadly form of malaria, but that's not so good. Malaria causes more deaths in the world each year than HIV/AIDS. It disproportionately targets pregnant women and children under age 5. Left untreated, it can kill or permanently damage its victims, including causing cerebral damage to children. According to Dr. Klaus Borg of the Sumba Foundation, he has 5 clinics on Sumba, and he has a malaria school. He's a PhD in malaria, and helped to design the national malaria program in Indonesia, and Klaus is our mentor and advisor on Health Access Sumbawa. So without Klaus, we could not be doing this work. So Klaus says from his work, 20% of children in remote parts of eastern Indonesia either die from malaria or suffer permanent disability before reaching adulthood. Yet the root cause of malaria is poverty, because it's treatable and preventable. So I was lucky to be home in Maine when I got sick. I was able to receive the most advanced medical care money can buy, and the professionalism of Miles' emergency ward really impressed me. So it was on a Saturday. I didn't want to go in. I said, it's a Saturday. The doctors aren't working. Let's wait till Monday. And Kathy said, no, you're going right now. She said, you don't know what you look like. So she helps me to the car and gets me down. Within 2 hours, not only had they diagnosed the malaria, but they had known exactly what type of malaria that I had and the percent infection rate. And they put me in an ambulance and sent me to Maine. So the compassion of the staff and the life-saving care that I received from the doctors and nurses at Miles and Maine Med really touched and inspired me. After I recovered, I got thinking about what it would be like for an undernourished child to fall sick from malaria in Sili village. No drugs, no doctor, not much hope for a satisfactory outcome. When they get sick in Sili, Mom puts you to bed and they just hope for the best. So that's when I called my friends, Pete Skinner and Don Flynn, and together we organized and funded Health Access Sumbawa. Peter is a prominent environmental engineer. He worked for the state of New York as the only scientist in the Justice Department. Pete has an analytical, scientific mind that I needed on the team. As a recognized river activist and extreme whitewater paddler, Pete is utterly fearless. That arrow is pointing to Peter at the top of a waterfall when we were young. Donna Flynn, hello Donna, has been involved in Haiti as long as I've been involved in Indonesia. So we have this in common. She has lots of business experience, but her most important contribution, from my point of view, is her positive spirit. So Donna can motivate a snail to run up a hill. Her encouragement would give me courage. You need allies, you need people to talk to. You can't do something like this on your own. My wife Kathy, Mary Sheldon, and so many other people helped after that first impulse to do something. The mission of Health Access Sumbawa is to deliver health services to remote communities because good health should not stop at the end of the road. The Indonesian government has a national goal to control malaria by 2017. I can report that they are not going to make it. Progress is being made in the cities and towns located on the main roads. The smaller communities, it's much harder for the government to get to, and small isolated places like Sili, Panubu, and Maci, the 3 villages where we're involved, they do nothing. And they will do nothing because they just are overwhelmed. So this is the unmet need that Health Access Sumbawa is filling. This is our niche. Health for remote communities. So at first, when I first approached Peter with this idea, he had a logical question. So with all the suffering in the world, why get involved here? After thinking a little bit, actually I had a pretty good answer for him. We can make a huge difference here where somewhere else we probably could not. And part of it is because it is so isolated. So having gone to school on malaria a little bit, one of the things that I learned is that they have a terrible problem in Africa eliminating malaria because in most areas, on the main roads, there's a lot of people coming and going, so if you control the malaria in one place, it's being reinfected constantly by new people arriving from other towns and villages. Here we have a very isolated situation. In the wet season, there are no passable roads coming in from the main road, which is up in the top left corner, runs along that area. And over here, no real roads into these three villages. So it means that if we could eliminate all of the parasite within the population, in these people, in this valley, that reinfection rate would be very low, because there's just not a lot of new people who might be infected coming in. So that was a fundamental insight, which would allow us a great return on time and money invested. So these farmers, seaweed harvesters and fishermen, have no road access in the rainy season, which means we have a nearly closed system. If we can identify and treat all the cases of malaria, keep the area free of malaria for about a month, all the infected mosquitoes will have died off, because mosquitoes only live for 2 or 3 weeks in the wild. So going forward, the uninfected mosquitoes would pose no malaria risk. Or to say it another way, we don't have to eliminate all the mosquitoes, which would be impossible. We only have to eliminate the Plasmodium parasites in the human population. So this was the wow moment, okay? The rare opportunity. For the first time in hundreds, maybe thousands of years, this valley could be free of malaria. And the beautiful thing is, malaria is treatable and preventable. So we were presented with a golden opportunity to change the destiny of 1,000 people. And if we didn't do it, nobody else would. It was too good an opportunity to pass up. So now I want to take you through slides and show you what we've done since that time. So we have this audacious plan, right? We're going to eliminate malaria from 3 villages, 1,000 people, within 3 years for about the price of a new car. Now, I'm not sure if that's a compact car or a Mercedes. Two-step program. So the first is, doesn't require any medical staff. We can buy bed nets. We can do a census of the villages. We can identify either by GPS or house number on every house, where everybody is, who lives in every house. From that, make up a plan. How many nets do we need for each house? Distribute the nets and get 100% of the population under bed nets. So we thought, we'll do that first. We don't need to know really, well, we thought we didn't need to know anything much to do that. Okay? Turns out, not quite that simple. So bed nets, right? I mean, how hard could it be? Right, bed net. So it turns out, well, when I approached the first supplier, I said, what do you want? Polyester nets or nylon? I don't really know. Do you want 1 tab, 4 tabs, or 6 tabs? Do you want single nets or double nets? What size holes do you want? Do you want 50 denier or 75 denier nets? So we had, actually, just to do bed nets, we had to learn quite a bit. Secondly, we need to have a medical component. So we need to actually be able to diagnose malaria and then treat everyone and keep people treated for a month. So keep the whole area free of malaria for a month. The infected mosquitoes die off, and then, theoretically, this works, we will have eliminated malaria from the valley, the first time ever. And then there's a process of monitoring. Anybody gets fever, prick their finger, put it under a microscope, see if they have malaria.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Don't the other animals that get bit by these mosquitoes, like the pigs and the cows and the horses also, are they vectors also?
Okay. Good question. They do have malaria, but it's not the same malaria.
Okay.
So the malaria that a cow has cannot be transmitted to a human.
Question. Do the residents have any, are are they immune to it at all?
Okay, good question. So this is why children under 5 and pregnant women and anybody with a deficient immune system are the most vulnerable, and tourists, by the way, okay? Because no immunity. So if they survive to be teenagers, they don't really get malaria, they get the effects of malaria, the symptoms of malaria that I got. It's more like a bad flu. They may not even know they have malaria, but the problem is they're still a reservoir of the parasite. So when we can't just test sick people, we have to test 100% of the population. Because even people who think they're not sick could easily be a reservoir for the parasite. So we start buying nets. For price reasons, we found the nets of the right specification that we needed in China. I bought 500 nets in January 2015. That was a whole adventure itself. Found out that, oh, you can't bring bed nets into Indonesia without a special permit. Good, give me a permit. Nobody has a permit. So we paid a processing fee of about $2 a net to get them in anyway. But after going through, yes? 10 minutes, okay. Yeah, we're good. And we can take a few questions as we go along here, so maybe we won't have time for a question and answer period afterwards. We repackaged the 100 bale nets into smaller boxes, send them to the post office, pick them up on a motorbike, get them on a boat, get them to see the village. I told you about my trip in 2000 over to Lombok. At that time, Idris worked for me running my little garment factory. This is Idris here. He's now field manager for Health Access Sumbawa. And they're out doing the census and getting ready to distribute bed nets. This is Idris making house numbers by stenciling. I brought a stencil from Supplies Unlimited over there, and he took a little spray paint. We made numbers for every house. So here we are, we're checking our list. Okay, this house gets 3 nets, and then we have our crew. Well, there's putting the numbers up, hanging the nets. All volunteers from the village are doing all of this. So we completed Sili village in 2015, and then I went back over in February, March of this year, and we completed the other 2 villages. We go by motorbike, bring the nets by motorbike on trails to the other villages. So it's only about 15 minutes away by motorbike. Yes?
What language did you communicate in?
Well, so it's not so easy. There's Bahasa Indonesia, which is the national language. Most of them don't speak it. They speak Bima, so there isn't even a Sumbawa language. There are 2 languages, and they don't understand each other. There's a Sumbawa language, and there's a Bima language. But, so those who could speak Bahasa Indonesia, translated into Bima for those who didn't, and Idris speaks English, so I use mostly English. I have a little bit of Bahasa Indonesia, not what it should be. So everybody now is 100% covered by bed nets, and so then we still have not treated the first case of malaria. We need a clinical. So we go make contact with the health department. This is Badonkin, and the young woman there is Etty. She is a laboratory technician working every day at the hospital, unpaid, and they have no laboratory. They have a microscope in a box in a spare office. That's the facility. So that's the Toronto district, so we're under the administrative head of this district. 17,000 people in that district. So after checking with the health department, turns out we're going to have to actually build a laboratory, and because they have no facility. So we have to do it ourselves, build a whole laboratory in the village. We did not really anticipate that. That's where the Mercedes car comes in. We get agreement that they will allow us to send Eti and Burhan, the male nurse in the village, to the Sumba Foundation for WHO certification in malaria microscopy. So we go over, we kind of promised we would do that before we'd ever met Klaus, actually. So then we get hold of Klaus finally, and we go over to Sumba, and we convince him that we're a worthy project and he should take our 2 students. Then we design, this is still in 2015, September, I'm back home. Peter's got a graphic artist that he works with in his business. We designed up a clinic, send it over to Idris, he starts working. They built the whole clinic while I was not there. So here's putting the well together, kids helping to unload bricks. It's the dry season, so we could get a 4-wheel drive truck in. All of the wood parts were made locally by a local carpenter, and the stone was local, and the clinic starts to go up. So by January of this year, we now have a clinic, big front porch, which turned out to be very useful. Patient treatment area and office is the first room, and then the second window in the back is the laboratory. We connect up to the photovoltaic power plant, so we have power. And community starts to use the facility. So it happened that just about the time we were ready to open, there was the time of the annual polio vaccine. So the woman's health nurse was invited to use our facility, and this kind of introduced the village to the use of the clinic, and they kind of made it their own, which is great. And they could do prenatal exams for 14 pregnant women in town.
Excuse me, did you say you hooked up to the photovoltaic that was already there?
That's right.
And that was enough for the clinic and the people?
We don't use much power, but
Okay.
yeah, we're just like one more house.
Okay.
And then to try to make a start on the nutrition problem, we decided that irrigated gardens made a lot of sense, so we're going to do a demonstration garden at the clinic. So we started growing vegetables and irrigating them, and they prospered. And now it's in the middle of the dry season, and I've had photos emailed to me from smartphones, and they've got all kinds of vegetables there, and it hasn't rained in 5 months. So it definitely is something that could work. We also tested for clean water, these little Sawyer water filters. You never need to buy a new filter, you can just backwash it, made in Florida, so I've got several being tested in homes. And these are a few of my favorite photos from the smallest of the 3 villages, Panubu. And this is from my time there in February and March of this year. Kind of neat and tidy that village is. In this house, we were hanging bed nets, and I saw a woman sitting on the floor. It was dark in the house. Couldn't really see, but she had something on her, on her legs, and asked her, to show us what she had, and she shows us her newborn baby.
What sect of Muslim are they? If there is a sect, what is it? What's the religion like?
I think they're Sunnis, but it's not a big factor there.
They're not praying every day, bowing.
Well, I mean, they don't. The sex is not a big issue in Indonesia. They don't have. It's not like the Middle East. So, they're. Let's just say that their mosque was in very poor condition and had a big hole in the roof. So I don't think they're putting a lot of their resources into religion.
Okay. Thanks.
Oldest couple in the village, and of course the kids will always melt your heart. So success today. 100% of the population now sleeps under bed nets. 234 homes, 566 net, 1,000 people. New clinic and lab have been built. All the lab equipment has been purchased. First running water in Sili, first toilet in Sili, first irrigated community garden in Sili, and we've dug 2 wells. And then finally Klaus could receive our trainees. So on August 15th, they went over to Sumba and started their training. So we're hoping in a couple of weeks they will come back to the village with their World Health Organization certification as malaria microscopists, and then we can begin diagnosing and treating malaria. And it should take us less than a year to get all 3 villages clear of malaria once we start. So it's only been since, well, we only started the malaria program in January of 2015. So it's not been long. And I have so many memories already. It's been an amazing experience. I've had an opportunity to teach English in schools in all 3 villages, which is a riot. Kids are so much fun. Made 1,000 new friends. Had a few high adventures, like we were told that there was this bat cave that was full of guano that nobody had ever harvested, and we ought to go and get some for the garden. So we had to sneak past this large snake that was guarding the entrance. Klaus had warned us that you build a clinic, you're going to get, whatever health issues they've got, they're going to bring them to you. And in 2015, my last day, I was asked to meet someone that I had not yet met, and they took me into this darkened house, and this young man, 19 years old, had not been on a bed in a year, broke his back, and when he was part of a crew digging a well. And the picture on the right is him visiting the clinic this year, a year later. So we got him a wheelchair, and you can see he's put on weight. It costs us about $200 a year to supply him with the catheters and the things that he needs to keep him from being constantly infected, because he didn't have the money to buy the simple things that he needed. And he was suffering with high fever when we first met him. We've also got him started weaving fishing nets. So we put him in business making fishing nets, and promised to buy his first net. So we'll see how that goes. Other things were very easy. So we thought that old men didn't have enough education, they couldn't read. Turns out they just couldn't see. For $1, we were able to get 36 old men reading again. So looking ahead, we want to finish the job over the next year in Sili, Maci, and Panubu. And then we want to scale it up. I had asked Klaus and a few of our supporters, and a few supporters now, I asked them, do you think we should just turn this over to the government? They said, oh, don't do that. They said, you've got a great thing going, now you just got to scale it up. So now we're looking at organizing as a nonprofit, getting more money, hopefully from some foundations, to see if we can, because there's many, many more villages like this in Sumbawa. We've had some amazing volunteers, including John Monterisi, who has a summer house over in the Mills and teaches English in Boston. He came out and taught English with me this winter, has donated a little bit, and it was great to have a comrade over there. So these are the kids saying, "Terima kasih," thank you so much, as we leave in 2016 for the season. And these are the kids on the other side. These kids were just as poor 15 years ago, and they're doing pretty well. So a little economic development can make a huge difference in people's lives. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present this, and I'm happy to take any questions.